Imagine boarding a flight. Heart racing as a routine day spirals into a nightmare of racial injustice that could happen to anyone right here in the USA or UK. Where headlines scream about profiling gone wrong, from George Floyd to stop-and-search scandals. What if one prejudiced call shattered a pilot's life forever, exposing the raw underbelly of bias in our skies? This gripping tale of regret, power, and redemption will hook you from the first word, forcing you to confront uncomfortable truths. Don't miss out. Subscribe now to Grok Premium Plus on X.com for unlimited access to bold, unfiltered stories like this, plus exclusive insights from XAI that challenge the status quo. Hit that subscribe button today and join the movement for truth. Your next eye-opener awaits. Oh, in the bustling heart of Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, where the hum of jet engines blended with the chatter of hurried travelers, Captain Elias Hawthorne adjusted his crisp pilot's uniform, feeling the weight of another long-haul flight ahead. At 52 years old, with silver streaks in his neatly trimmed hair and a career spanning 3 decades, Elias prided himself on his unblemished record, punctual, professional, and always in control. But on this sweltering July afternoon in 2024, control was about to slip through his fingers like sand. As he strode through the terminal toward gate B-17, his eyes caught sight of a young black boy, no older than 12, lingering near the restricted area by the jet bridge. The boy, dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, was fiddling with something in his backpack, his dark curls peeking out from under the hood. Elias's mind raced. Post-9/11's training had drilled into him the mantra of, see something, say something. But beneath that was a deeper, unspoken bias he'd never fully confronted. One shaped by years of subtle prejudices whispered in crew lounges and echoed in news feeds. Why was this kid alone? Where were his parents? What was he doing so close to the plane? Without a second thought, Elias pulled out his phone and dialed airport security, his voice low but firm. This is Captain Hawthorne. There's a suspicious individual near gate B-17, a young black male, possibly tampering with something. Send police immediately. Little did he know, this call would unravel his life in ways he could never imagine. The boy, Jamal Thompson, was indeed alone for the moment, but not without reason. His father, Dr. Marcus Thompson, the newly appointed administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, had stepped away to take an urgent call from the White House. Marcus, towering figure at 6 feet 4 inches, with a commanding presence honed from years in aviation safety and civil rights advocacy, had brought Jamal along on this trip to Washington, D.C. as a treat. Chance for the boy to see the inner workings of the industry his dad now led. Jamal, bright-eyed and curious, had been given strict instructions. Stay put, don't wander. But curiosity got the better of him. He was merely pulling out a model airplane from his backpack, a gift from his father, to show to a nearby flight attendant who had smiled at him earlier. As the police sirens wailed faintly in the distance, approaching the gate, Jamal froze, his small hands clutching the toy like a lifeline. Travelers began to murmur, phones emerging to capture the unfolding drama. Elias, standing a few feet away, felt a twinge of satisfaction. Better safe than sorry, he thought until he saw the boy's face. Wide-eyed with confusion rather than guilt, Officer Ramirez and his partner, both seasoned Atlanta PD veterans assigned to airport detail, arrived swiftly, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Step back, everyone," Ramirez barked, his hand resting on his holster as he approached Jamal. "That's son. What's in?" "The bag," Jamal stammered. "It's just my plane, ... My dad gave it to me." But the officers, trained to err on the side of caution, asked him to empty the backpack. Out tumbled notebooks, snacks, and the plastic F-16 model, harmless as could be. Elias watched from afar, his confidence waning as no threats materialized. Then, a deep voice boomed through the crowd. "What the hell's going on here, Dr. Marcus?" Thompson pushed through the gathering onlookers, his FAA credentials dangling from a lanyard around his neck. His eyes locked on his son, then on the officers, and finally on Elias, who suddenly felt the air thicken. "That's my boy," Marcus said, his tone laced with controlled fury. "And who called this in?" Leah stepped forward, his pilot's cap in hand. trying to maintain composure. "I did, sir. Captain Elias Hawthorne, Delta Airlines. I saw the young man near the restricted area and thought it best to report it." Marcus's gaze hardened. He recognized the name from pilot rosters he'd reviewed in his new role. FAA Administrator appointed just months ago by the President amid a push for diversity in aviation leadership. Marcus had made it his mission to root out biases and the industry biases that had nearly derailed his own career as a young black engineer. "You thought wrong, Captain," Marcus replied, pulling out his phone to make a call of his own. Within minutes, airport management arrived, and the situation escalated. Elias was pulled aside for questioning, his flight delayed as a replacement. Pilot was summoned. Whispers spread like wildfire. The pilot who profiled the FAA chief's son. Social media exploded hashtags like #AviationRacism and #profiled at the gate, trending as passengers live tweeted the incident. But this was only the beginning. As Elias sat in a sterile conference room, sweating under the scrutiny of security footage review, he reflected on his life. Born in rural Georgia to a family of farmers, Elias had clawed his way up through the Air Force, then commercial aviation, always priding himself on merit over handouts. Yet deep down, he'd harbored resentment's affirmative action, he believed, had given others unfair advantages. This call, he rationalized, was just protocol. But as Marcus entered the room, flanked by FAA investigators, Elise's world tilted. "Captain Hawthorne," Marcus began, "your actions today not only endangered my son emotionally, but violated FAA guidelines on non-discriminatory reporting. Effective immediately. Your license is under review." Elias's heart sank. Suspension could end his career, he protested. "It was a mistake. I didn't know who he was." Marcus leaned in, his voice steady. "That's the point. It shouldn't matter who he is. Bias doesn't care about titles." As news broke nationally, Elise's phone buzzed incessantly reporters. Colleagues, even his ex-wife calling to berate him. Delta placed him on administrative leave, and by evening, he was home in his suburban Atlanta condo, staring at the TV as CNN dissected the story. Pilot's prejudice. FAA admin's son targeted the Chiron Red. Elias poured a scotch, his mind racing. How could this happen? He wasn't racist, he told himself, just cautious. But as he scrolled through Twitter, now X, the vitriol poured in. Death threats. Calls for his firing. Little did he know, this was the first twist in a labyrinth of revelations that would append everything. The next morning, Elias awoke to a knock on his door. It was a process server, handing him papers, a lawsuit from the Thompson family for emotional distress and defamation. Marcus, leveraging his position, had fast-tracked an FAA investigation, uncovering Elias's history of minor complaints. Nothing overt, but a pattern of reporting suspicious passengers who were often people of color. Elias hired a lawyer, a slick Atlanta firm specializing in discrimination cases, but the odds were stacked. Meanwhile, Jamal, traumatized but resilient, confided in his father about his dreams of becoming a pilot someday. Marcus, seeing an opportunity for change, decided to turn this personal affront into a broader crusade. He announced a new FAA initiative, mandatory bias training for all pilots. With Elise's case as the cautionary tale, weeks turned into months as the investigation dragged on. Elise's grounded and isolated, delved into self-reflection, or so he thought. He joined online forums, venting anonymously about reverse racism and how the system was rigged against white men like him. But one night, scrolling through ancestry sites on a whim, Elias uncovered a family secret. His great-grandfather had been a sharecropper with mixed heritage, including African roots suppressed by generations of passing as white. Shocked, Elias stared at the DNA results, 12% West African. Was this the twist fate had in store? Confronted his elderly mother, who confessed, "We never talked about it, son. Times were different." This revelation cracked Elias's worldview. The biases he'd clung to were built on denial of his own blood. Emboldened, Elias reached out to Marcus, requesting a meeting. "I need to apologize," he wrote in an email. Marcus, ever the strategist, agreed, but on his terms at the FAA headquarters. In D.C. there, in a wood-paneled office overlooking the Potomac, Elias poured out his story, the ancestry discovery, his regrets, the fear that drove his call. Marcus listened, then shared his own past, growing up in Chicago's South Side, facing discrimination in engineering school, rising through sheer grit to lead the FAA. Regret is a start, Marcus said, but action is redemption, he offered Elias. A deal. Drop the defensiveness. Testify in favor of the bias training program. Perhaps salvage his career, but twists abound. As Elias prepared to go public, a whistleblower emerged, a colleague revealing that Elias had once covered up a minor safety violation on a flight. Falsifying logs to avoid scrutiny, the media pounced. Hypocrite pilot, called cops. On kid while hiding, own mistakes. Elias's lawyer advised settling the lawsuit, but pride got in the way. He fought back, leaking stories about Marcus's overreach.